Hello and good morning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is Nihad Awad, the National Executive Director of CARE. And I'm joined also with Robert Maka, the Director of Government Affairs at CARE National.
Assalamu
Today, wa alaikum assalam. How are you, Robert?
Alhamdulillah.
Good. So today we are going to share with you an exciting and important news about the results of the post-debate survey of American Muslim voters that CARE conducted. Traditionally, CARE conducts surveys of American Muslim opinions on issues and candidates since the beginning of CARE. In 1998, CARE started to survey the opinions of Muslims, of Muslim voters mainly, and we have been doing it ever since in the midterms elections in the fall and also for the general elections. After the elections, right away, we conduct also exit polls to see how American Muslims actually voted on issues and also for the candidates. This is a critically important function that CARE does to showcase the American Muslim community's orientation and direction and inclination towards the issues of concern to them. This year is also important because of the issues that we are confronting in our nation. And the American Muslim community, especially, is dealing with the issues of Islamophobia, the hate crimes, and at the same time, the Muslim community is becoming more civically and politically engaged. There are quite few Muslims running for public office, and there are Muslims are getting more active in voter registration and voter mobilization. This year's election is critical for everybody in the nation and probably in the world. CARE is a nonpartisan organization, and as such, we do not tell the Muslim community voters whom to vote for and to whom to vote against because of our tax status. There are affiliate organizations like CARE PAC registered in California. Along with CARE National, we're going to issue a voter guide, and that will give an idea, roadmap on, or actually it will disclose the record of many candidates where they actually stand on issues and their record voting, and that will help the Muslim community understand, and they will make their own decisions. 527 organizations can give that direction to the community, but CARE National itself does not. So without any further delay, I would like just to let you know that it is very important for you to register to vote if you have not. And this year, it is very important for you to vote early if possible, and also to vote by mail. Some people are waiting for the day of elections to go. That is your right, and you can do that, but we highly recommend that you vote as early as possible. Encourage your family members, your friends, and that will help the entire nation understand where the voters are going. So let me just introduce now Robert Maka, who conducted and helped conduct the survey, and we will receive comments and questions from you, and that should be done immediately, and the press conference will not be more than maybe 20 minutes because of the settings, in COVID-19 circumstances. So thank you, and I'll wait for Robert to start.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. Again, my name is Robert McCann, the National Government Affairs Director with the Council on American Islamic Relations. I've had the privilege and opportunity to conduct this survey of Muslim voters, of registered Muslim voters, right after the last presidential debate. The presidential debate was hosted on September 29th. Our survey was conducted on the evening of September 30th because we really wanted to narrow in and see how are Muslim voters responding to the presidential candidates after they've been able to witness both candidates debate each other, and they have the best understanding of that dynamic. So I'd like to jump right into the survey and talk a little bit about its methodology, just how we conducted the survey, and then we can go over the 12 questions that we parsed out with registered Muslim voters. So if our producer could share the screen. This is a preview of our survey. It's a report cover. We'll be publishing this later today, right after this press conference. Very excited to jump right into the methodology. So CAIR has a nationwide database of 146,000 Muslim voter households. That represents nearly 500,000 registered Muslim voters. That's just with landlines. We have a separate database, of course, for cell phones. And of that, we randomly selected these households until we were able to survey nearly 850 respondents. That was 449 men and 325 women and 72 people who preferred not to answer. The survey itself has a margin of error of 3.3%, and it has a confidence interval of 95%. CAIR's database of Muslim voters is developed off of a list of traditional Muslim names that we've compiled. It, of course, excludes names like Sarah or Adam because there's crossover in other communities, but we try our best to narrow in on the Muslim community and find them where they are registered. Jumping into the first question, the top line survey results, we did ask Muslim voters what was the likelihood that they would be turning out in this election. And 89.2% of respondents, that's 755 individuals, said they would definitely will, and 4% said they would probably will, while 3% said might or might not. When you actually look at how Muslim voters responded to our 2020 survey versus our 2016 survey for the last presidential election, we can see that there's over a 10% shift in Muslim voters who responded to definitely will. We've seen that probably will shift down.
Robert,
Yes?
sorry, and this 10% shift is higher than 2016, right?
Yes, it is. It's actually about 15% of more Muslims are saying they would definitely vote in this election versus the prior election. And what we do see is respondents who traditionally say they might or might not, probably won't, definitely will not, that has all gone down. So Muslim voters are very charged, they're activated. Those who are registered to vote are looking forward to vote. We saw last week in a survey by the Institute for Social Policy Understanding that the gap has narrowed between Muslims who are eligible to vote versus Muslims who are able to vote because they have registered. So not only are Muslims registered in higher numbers, they intend to turn out in this election, which is very exciting. When we went to our second question, Muslim voter political party affiliation, we asked registered Muslim voters which political party do they primarily vote for, and we saw that 66% of respondents said that they primarily vote for the Democratic Party, and 19% of Muslim registered voter respondents said they primarily vote for the Republican Party. And when we go back to the last presidential election and midterm, these numbers relatively hold the same. There was a slight increase of more Muslim voters for the midterm election supporting the Democratic Party. But if you look at the last presidential election and this election, they've relatively held the same. So I think we've seen a stabilization in the Muslim exodus from the Republican Party following a higher participation of Muslims who previously voted Republican. So this is kind of the established trend in the Muslim community. About 66% support the Democratic Party, 19% support the Republican Party. Going to the third survey question, Muslim voter preferred presidential candidates in the 2020 election, we can clearly see that Joe Biden has taken the lead for support in the Muslim community. 71% of registered Muslim voters surveyed said after the night following the presidential debate that they support Joe Biden if there was an election being held that day that they were being surveyed. 18% said that they would be voting for Donald Trump, and we saw 8% identify as still undecided, they don't know. So we can already see that the lines have kind of been drawn in the Muslim community, and that Joe Biden right now is the preferred presidential candidate of Muslims in America.
Okay, that's good.
Excellent. This is a new survey question that we started in the last midterm that we've been carrying through to see and try to understand the political leanings of Muslim voters. And so we have two, one on social issues, one on fiscal issues. When we polled Muslim voters asking generally, do you lean more conservative or liberal on social issues? 42% of Muslims identified as being liberal on social issues. 34% identified as being conservative. So there's not a huge difference, although 23% preferred not to answer that question. So I would at this point say that American Muslims are leaning a little bit more socially liberal than they are conservative on these issues, and we let this undefined. The respondent to the survey, they themselves have to reflect on what they think is liberal or conservative on social issues, and this is how they responded. And if you look at the margin of error in the poll, it's remained relatively about the same for the last 2 years on these issues.
And obviously, as you said, Robert, the term conservative versus liberal, this is in the general sense in American cultural discourse, but not in in so-called Islamic terms. So this is like
yes,
okay, yeah,
yes. This is in the political sense, and this is also self-identified and defined. And we asked that same question on fiscal issues. And it actually turns out that Muslims are more conservative on fiscal issues. 42% identified as being fiscally conservative, while only 37% identified as being liberal. They're about the same within the margin of error, but there's a slight more lead of fiscal conservatism in the Muslim community. Again, about 20% of respondents preferred not to answer. I think when you take both these numbers hand in hand, what we're getting is an understanding that there are a number of Muslim voters that identify as either being fiscally or socially conservative that finding themselves voting or supporting Democratic candidates or parties in the last several elections, and that Muslim voters themselves, I think if some of them were being better appealed to by more politically conservative parties like the Republican Party, they might be open towards voting that way. But because of noted hostility that we found among some conservative politicians towards the Muslim community, that's a barrier at this time.
And as you mentioned, the margin of error is 3%. So it is relatively close to each other.
Yeah, it is. It's very close. This is another interesting question that we like asking Muslim voters. We ask them where they view party commitment to core principle issues. So do they view the Democratic Party as being more committed to the issue of religious freedom, or the Republican Party being more protective of the issue of religious freedom? I would like to note for this question and many other questions in the survey, we rotated whether we asked first for the Democratic Party or Republican Party, so a bias couldn't be developed in answering the first question and then going to the second. What we can see is a clear majority of Muslim registered voters view the Democratic Party as being more committed to the issues of protecting religious freedom, addressing racial inequality, providing access to health care, and treating all immigrants equally. When you go back to that percentage of Muslim voters that support the Democratic Party or are intending to vote for Vice President Biden in the upcoming general election, you can also see that that voting trend corresponds to this perception of the Democratic Party. Conversely, if you look at the number of Muslim voters that identify as supporting Donald Trump in the election, which was 19%, 19% of registered Muslim voters thought that the Republican Party did a good job at protecting religious freedom, or 16% thought the Republican Party does address the issue of racial inequality as a core commitment. 15% of registered Muslim voters also viewed the Republican Party as being committed to providing accessible health care or treating immigrants equally. But when you look at these two parallels, it's obvious that in the Muslim community right now, registered Muslim voters are viewing the Democratic Party as being more committed to these social issues of religious freedom, racial inequality, providing accessible health care, and treating immigrants equally.
Okay.
All right. And because we did hold this survey right after the presidential election, debate, we had to, of course, ask who won the first presidential debate. 58.9% of registered Muslim voters thought Joe Biden won the debate, while 14.4% of registered Muslim voters thought Trump won the debate, and 20.9% thought they were unsure who won that debate. And that actually really matches not only our statistics on how Muslim voters view presidential candidates, which ones they're preferring, but that unsure number really matches the American public, where it was a very chaotic debate, and it was really hard to see who was the clear winner, or just because of the chaos of that debate, there wasn't a clear victor in some people's heads.
Okay.
All right, so going to the next survey question, question 8. We asked for Muslim voter perception of the Democratic Party's disposition towards Muslims. So that's essentially asking, do you view the Democratic Party as being friendly, neutral, or unfriendly? And we asked the same question, that's question 9, for the Republican Party. And what we saw was that 42% of Muslim voters in 2020 indicated that they thought the Democratic Party was friendly, 44% thought it was neutral, and 14% thought it was actually unfriendly. When you compare these numbers to the last presidential debates, the last presidential election in 2016 and in 2012, what you can see is that there has been a decline in the number of Muslim voters that view the Democratic Party as being favorable or friendly towards them. And we did some analysis and discussions with community members, informally talking amongst CAIR staff and outside. And we thought 3 possible reasons for the decline in Muslim voters viewing the Democratic Party as being friendly could have been some hostility that some members of the Democratic Party had shown the first 2 Muslim women elected to Congress, Representatives Ilhan Omar and Representative Rashida Tlaib, because of their support for Palestinian freedom issues. We also observed that in the 2016 Democratic National Convention that there were more primetime Muslim speakers, while in the current DNC convention, Muslims were just put on side panels. And we also thought that recent attacks against Muslim leaders by certain Democratic politicians for their pro-Palestinian stances could have caused a divide on this for perception of Democratic Party friendliness.
And that could be probably the issue when the Biden campaign dismissed Linda Sarsour.
Yes.
And the Muslim community reacted, including CAIR. We condemned the attack on Linda Sarsour because of her advocacy for Palestinian rights. But we do not know for sure if this is the only reason. But knowing what happens in the background, probably that may have affected and impacted the views of some Muslim voters.
That's what we are speculating on this.
You're right.
And so we do ask that same question of Muslim voter perception of the Republican Party. 16% in 2020 thought the Republican Party was friendly. 24% thought it was neutral. 61% thought it was unfriendly. And these numbers hold relatively close to each other for the past 8 years since 2012. We see that there has been a jump in some Muslim voters thinking the Republican Party is more friendly towards Muslims. Slightly less think the Republican Party is neutral. About the same view it as being unfriendly. Again, talking to other Muslim colleagues, trying to understand the trends for why this might be. We do think it is in part due to frequent support of anti-Muslim initiatives at the state level, like anti-foreign law legislation, or the federal adoption of the Muslim ban definitely contributed to this, as not listed here, but we think attacks again on Muslim members of Congress by Republican lawmakers. I know I recently received a flyer at my own house that had a photo of Ilhan Omar as being a threat by the Virginia Republican Party. And if you had a respondent in Virginia that was responding to CAIR'S survey and they saw that, they might be able to draw that same perception.
And also, if I made
Yeah.
make like a
Please.
quick point here, the House of Representatives, which is controlled by Democrats, they passed 600 pieces of legislation so far. 150 of them got signed into law by the president, but 340 of these legislation have been stuck in the Senate. The Senate is obviously controlled by Republicans. So the majority of bills, House bills that have passed in the House of Representatives so far, did not make them into laws. And these could have been laws and changed the lives of so many people in this country if they were also passed by the Senate for them to go to the desk of the president to be signed into law, or he might veto them. So probably that may explain the division between the House and the Senate and its impact on how people view probably the Republican Party.
Agreed. When we look at our last non-demographic survey question, just perception of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim sentiment in the United States, we were asking, do Muslim voters think Islamophobia has increased or decreased in the past 4 years? And 67% said it had increased, while 15% thought it had decreased and 18% preferred not to answer that question. In comparison to the midterm election, these numbers have remained relatively the same. And so the majority of Muslim voters do believe that Islamophobia has increased in the past 4 years. And we also view that in line with a lot of CAIR'S research into taking anti-Muslim bias complaints through our civil rights department. Brother Nihad?
Yeah, this is obviously a critical issue because the American Muslim community has been at the receiving end of the rise in sharp increase in cases, whether hate crimes or cases of discrimination or anti-Muslim sentiments by key Republican Party operatives, including President Trump himself. The attacks on Ilhan Omar, on the Muslim community, on mosques, especially at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, so on and so forth. So the president has a dark history in targeting people of color, minorities, but in particular the American Muslim community. So when you see in the survey that Muslim voters feel that Islamophobia is on the rise, that's a very accurate reflection because CAIR also receives these reports, complaints from the Muslim community, and that's an important function of what CAIR does every day for the community.
Thank you. And finally, and we said this number earlier when looking at the demographics, we had 53% of our respondents being male, 38% being female, and again, 8% declining to answer. We find that in surveying landlines in the community that it skews a little bit more male than female. But when we actually break down the responses, whether it's male or female, we actually found that the responses didn't actually break. They were relatively the same by a percentage point or two.
Okay.
And then finally, looking just at the age distribution, we did swing slightly older, starting at age 35 and moving up for this survey, as is typical of landline surveys. So that's where we're concluding in the survey for respondents.
So I have just a note to make, and also for you to elaborate on. Obviously, as I said, CAIR has been monitoring and assessing the inclinations of American Muslims and their attitudes towards issues and candidates. And this year is very critical. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, that this survey was conducted throughout the United States.
It was conducted in 49 states.
49 states.
And the District of Columbia.
But from knowing that the swing states, the ones that are in play, like Ohio, Georgia, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Florida, including probably Pennsylvania and Virginia, these are the states that may decide the election this year. And we believe that since there is a large Muslim population in these states, all of them, that the Muslim votes can be the margin of victory. They can be the margin of victory for the winner of this elections. And therefore, the Muslim votes count and are important. And every vote, we as a community believe that should not be saved, should not be, wasted. So those people who think, well, my vote, I am part of a minority, you are the one who most likely will decide the results of this election. So don't be discouraged by what you see. Go and vote early, vote by mail, and don't wait until the day of the elections, although that's the last day you can vote. But don't waste your right to make a change. If you complain about the situation around you, one important and effective way to do it is to cast your vote. When our community members do that, they can be the ones that will swing this elections, inshallah.
Inshallah. And I would just add from the Government Affairs Department that we saw in the last presidential election that about a half dozen states came down to 1 to 2 percentage points of the results of that election. And Muslim voters in many of those states represent 1 to 2% of the population, and that Muslim voters can easily tip an election either way. And so it's incumbent upon the community, it's our civic duty to turn out to vote. We are going to be posting the results of this survey and our other election resources like voting by mail and voting early on our election website, muslims.vote. If you just went into your search bar and wrote muslims.vote, you would find this survey later today, along with resources on how to vote early and how to vote by mail in all 50 states.
So if you have any questions there, maybe you can monitor it. Otherwise, we will conclude here. But Robert, since you're monitoring the questions, let me know if there are any.
All right, and I would then pass the buck to our producer, Ayan. We haven't had any questions at this time. You can always email us at info@cair.com if you have any questions. If you need a copy of this report, again, to go to Muslims.vote, or the press can contact us directly. Thank you.
Okay, so again, remember that you matter, your voice matter, and your vote counts. So please go and vote and encourage people around you to do the same. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be to you.
Bye.